In the final years of the Second World War, the Pacific skies roared with fury. Among the clouds, a new sound rose, a piercing shriek that haunted enemies and inspired awe among allies. It was the voice of a machine both graceful and fearsome, the Vought F4U Corsair. To the Japanese, it became known as Whistling Death. To those who flew her, it was a test of courage, skill, and respect. The Corsair was more than a fighter. It was an embodiment of American ingenuity at its peak, a symbol of the struggle between technological perfection and the chaos of war. From the workshops of Connecticut to the island airfields of the South Pacific, it became the guardian of the fleet and the avenger of countless battles. This is the story of that machine, its creation, its failures, its triumphs, and its legacy. The tale of how an aircraft once deemed unfit for carriers became one of the greatest fighters ever built. This is the story of the Whistling Death, the fighter that ruled the skies when the world was at war. The story of the Corsair begins in 1938, when the clouds of war were already gathering over Europe and Asia. The United States Navy knew it would soon need a new generation of fighters, faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than anything that had come before. The challenge was simple in words but daunting in reality. Design a carrier-based aircraft capable of 400 miles per hour with enough range to cross oceans and the strength to fight its way home. At Chance Vought Aircraft, a team of engineers led by Rex Beisel took up the challenge. Their answer was bold, unconventional, and ahead of its time. They chose the most powerful engine available, the 18-cylinder Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, capable of producing over 2,000 horsepower. To harness that power, they paired it with a massive 13-foot propeller, the largest ever fitted to a single-engine fighter. But this enormous propeller created a new problem: how to keep it from striking the ground during takeoff and landing. The solution was ingenious: a bent or inverted gull wing. This design allowed shorter landing gear while providing ground clearance for the huge propeller. It also reduced drag and strengthened the wing roots. When the prototype XF4U-1 first took to the air in May 1940, it stunned test pilots. The aircraft screamed past the 400-mile-per-hour mark, the first American fighter ever to do so in level flight. It was sleek, powerful, and fast, a machine that promised to dominate the skies. But with speed came danger. The long nose blocked the pilot's view during landing. Its high torque and narrow landing gear made takeoffs tricky, and its handling at low speeds could be unpredictable. Still, on the drawing board and in the sky, the Corsair looked like the fighter of the future, a masterpiece of wartime design that would soon prove itself in battle. The Corsair's first encounters with carrier decks were far from glorious. When test pilots brought the prototype aboard Navy carriers in 1941, disaster followed. The plane bounced violently upon landing, often veering off course or crashing into the barriers. The long nose made it impossible to see the deck until the last moment. The Navy concluded that the F4U was too dangerous for carrier use. Yet the Marines saw promise where others saw peril. Stationed on island bases, they needed a fast, hard-hitting fighter to match the Japanese Zero. So, while Vought engineers worked to fix the Corsair's flaws, the Marines prepared to take it into combat from land. Vaught's engineers laboured tirelessly to tame the beast. They redesigned the cockpit canopy, replacing the old birdcage with a raised bubble that improved visibility. The pilot's seat was lifted higher. Stall strips were added to the right wing to control airflow, ensuring the wing dropped evenly during stalls. A new tailwheel shock absorber was fitted to absorb the brutal impacts of hard landings. By late 1942, the Corsair had been refined into a stable and deadly weapon, but its reputation would take time to recover. The Navy remained cautious, but the Marine Corps was ready to unleash it. As production ramped up, new versions rolled off the assembly lines at Vought, Goodyear, and Brewster. It was not an easy birth, but like many great war machines, the Corsair was forged in trial and error. The flaws that once doomed it became lessons that shaped one of the deadliest fighters of the war. By the time it reached the front lines, the Corsair was ready to prove itself worthy of the skies it was designed to conquer. In early 1943, the first Corsairs reached the South Pacific. Marine Fighter Squadron 124, VMF 124, took delivery of the F4U on Guadalcanal, a jungle island that had already become legendary for its fierce battles. The Corsairs' debut was rough. The heat, humidity, and mud punished both men and machines. Yet when the Corsairs took to the air, they revealed their true power. The Japanese Zero was still a formidable opponent, agile, lightweight, and deadly in skilled hands. But at low and medium altitudes, the Corsair was faster, tougher, and far more heavily armed. With 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns mounted in its wings, it could unleash a storm of lead capable of tearing a bomber apart in seconds. Marine pilots quickly learned to use speed and diving power to their advantage. They struck from above, blasted through enemy formations, and climbed away before the lighter Zeros could respond. In these deadly dances of speed and maneuver, the Corsair earned its reputation and its name. The distinctive sound of air rushing through its wing root intakes created a whistling scream that Japanese pilots came to fear. They called it whistling death. Among the Corsair's most famous units was VMF 214, led by Major Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, a tough, unpredictable ace who turned misfits into legends. Under Boyington's command, the Black Sheep Squadron destroyed over 200 enemy aircraft in just 6 months. Boyington himself scored 22 kills before being shot down and captured in January 1944. By 1945, Corsair squadrons dominated the Pacific. They bombed enemy installations, strafed ships, and flew escort for bombers. Their kill-to-loss ratio reached an astonishing 11-to-1. What began as an experimental fighter had become the terror of the Pacific, a weapon feared by all who faced it. In the spring of 1945, the Pacific War reached its climax at Okinawa, the last great battle before Japan itself. The invasion force included hundreds of ships, thousands of aircraft, and tens of thousands of men. Above them, the Corsair roared into its ultimate test. Kamikaze attacks became the Japanese weapon of desperation. From April through June, hundreds of suicide planes dived from the clouds, aiming for the American fleet. The Corsair's job was to stop them. Pilots from carriers like Bunker Hill, Essex, and Bennington flew constant patrols, sometimes for 16 hours a day, intercepting kamikazes before they could strike. It was brutal work. Pilots watched friends fall in flames as the sky turned into a battlefield of smoke and fire. On May 11, 1945, Bunker Hill itself was hit by 2 kamikazes, killing nearly 400 men. Yet that same day, Corsair pilots shot down dozens of attackers, saving countless ships. Their courage under relentless assault helped the fleet survive. Corsairs also served as bombers and ground attackers, hammering Japanese positions, supply depots, and artillery emplacements. They flew thousands of sorties, their blue wings darkening the sky above Okinawa. By the end of the battle, the Corsair had proven its worth beyond question, not just as a fighter, but as a guardian. It was the last great triumph of the piston engine age, and it came at a terrible cost. By the end of World War II, the Corsair had achieved legendary status. More than 12,600 were built by Vought, Goodyear, and Brewster. It flew over 64,000 combat sorties and destroyed more than 2,100 enemy aircraft, a record unmatched by any other US naval fighter. Its kill ratio of 11-to-1 was a testament not only to its design, but to the skill and bravery of its pilots. The Corsair's list of aces reads like a roll of honour. Pappy Boyington, Kenneth Walsh, Robert Hansen, and Ira Kepford all made their names flying the F4U. These men pushed the plane to its limits, diving through anti-aircraft fire, battling superior numbers, and returning to base with bullet holes stitched across their wings. In addition to its air victories, the Corsair excelled as a ground attack aircraft. It delivered precision strikes with bombs and rockets, wiping out enemy positions, tanks, and airfields. The Marines called it their Angel on High, a plane that appeared whenever they needed help most. The Corsair's combat record extended far beyond the war's end. Its reputation became part of aviation folklore, a machine that not only changed the course of the Pacific conflict, but also set the standard for every naval fighter that followed. When war returned in 1950, the Corsair was called back to duty. Though jets now ruled the skies, the Corsair's ruggedness and versatility made it invaluable in Korea. It served as a close support aircraft, attacking enemy positions, supply lines, and tanks. The cold, mountainous terrain and unpredictable weather tested both pilot and machine, yet the Corsair thrived. Marine and Navy squadrons flew thousands of sorties from carriers and airfields alike. They dropped bombs, fired rockets, and provided direct support to ground troops in brutal conditions. Its speed and agility made it perfect for low-level attacks where jets struggled to maneuver. In one of the most remarkable encounters of the war, Captain Jesse Fulmar of VMF 312 became the first propeller-driven pilot to shoot down a MiG-15 jet, proof that skill could still outmatch technology. The Corsair continued to serve throughout the Korean War, its distinctive whine echoing once again over the battlefield. By the time it was retired from US service in 1957, the Corsair had flown in 3 wars and served in over a dozen nations. France, Honduras, and South Vietnam all operated it well into the 1960s. The fighter that began as a troubled experiment had become a global symbol of reliability and strength. The legacy of the Corsair endures long after its final mission. Restored examples still fly at airshows, their engines rumbling like thunder, their wings gleaming in sunlight. Veterans gather to watch them and remember the friends who never came home. In museums and documentaries, the Corsair stands as a reminder of the courage and sacrifice that shaped the world's most brutal conflict. It also became a star of popular culture. The television series Bar Bar Black Sheep reintroduced the Corsair to new generations, celebrating its pilots and their daring exploits. But beyond fame and nostalgia, the Corsair remains a symbol of innovation, proof that even flawed beginnings can lead to greatness. From the jungles of Guadalcanal to the skies over Korea, the Whistling Death served with honor, power, and grace. It outlasted the war it was built for, evolved beyond its purpose, and carved its name into history as one of the greatest fighters ever flown. The roar of its engine may have faded, but its legend never will. The Corsair still flies, not in battle, but in memory, as the spirit of a generation that refused to yield.